Jake pressed another button on his tablet, and the display changed to show a timeline filled with dates and events. The courtroom grew quiet as beings leaned forward to read the information. Judge Zarmuth's crystalline body pulsed brighter as he focused on the details. "Ladies, gentlemen, and respected beings of all classifications," Jake began, "I want to start with the facts. Real facts, not the incomplete picture that has been presented to this tribunal." He pointed to the first entry on the timeline with a beam of light that appeared from his tablet. March 15th, 2387, at 1432 Galactic Standard Time, the Zephyrian government sends an official distress call to all Galactic Council members. The message was broadcast on emergency frequencies and marked with the highest priority codes. The display zoomed in on a communication log. The words appeared in the ancient Zephyrian script, then translated into common galactic language. Jake read the message aloud. "From Prime Crystal Vendor of the Zephyrian Unity Government to all Council species, our world dies. 18 months of civil war have brought us to the edge of extinction. The rebel faction led by War Crystal Morthic has begun using banned crystal shard weapons against our civilian population centers. Entire cities have been infected with shard plague. Our people are dying in ways that violate every law of civilized warfare. We request immediate intervention under Emergency Protocol 7, time remaining before total population collapse, less than 30 standard days." Murmurs spread through the courtroom. Several beings in the gallery looked surprised. This information had not been mentioned in any of the news reports about the case. Prosecutor Veltar stood up quickly, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. "Your Honor, this alleged message cannot be verified. The defendant could have created this evidence himself." Jake smiled and pressed another button. "I'm glad you brought that up, Prosecutor Veltar. Each communication in our records carries quantum authentication codes that cannot be forged. These codes are generated by the Galactic Council's own communication system and verified by 12 different species security protocols." New information appeared on the display, showing complex mathematical equations and verification stamps from various galactic governments. Each stamp glowed with a different color, indicating it had been checked and approved by different species authentication systems. "Furthermore," Jake continued, "every message I will show today has been stored in the Galactic Council's own archives. Your investigation team could have accessed this information at any time, but they chose not to." Judge Zarmuth's body pulsed in what Jake recognized as deep thought. The crystalline species processed information differently than most beings, taking time to consider all angles before making decisions. Jake advanced to the next slide. "Now, let's look at what was happening on the Zephyrian worlds during this crisis." The holographic display showed a three-dimensional map of the 3 planets. Red areas marked rebel-controlled territories, while blue areas showed government-held regions. What shocked the courtroom was how much red covered each world. As you can see, the rebel faction controlled 68% of the total landmass across all 3 worlds. But more importantly, they controlled all the major crystal mines, the primary water treatment facilities, and the main food production centers. Jake zoomed in on one of the planets. The Zephyrian people depend on their crystal technology for everything. Their buildings, their vehicles, their life support systems. Even their bodies have crystal implants that regulate their health. When the rebels started using crystal shard weapons, they weren't just killing people in explosions. They were poisoning the very crystals that kept Zephyrian civilization alive. A new image appeared showing Zephyrian civilians in what looked like hospital beds. Their normally bright, colorful crystal growths had turned black and were crumbling away from their bodies. Shard plague spreads through crystal networks. When infected shards come into contact with healthy crystals, they corrupt them, turning them into poison. Within hours, affected Zephyrians begin to die as their biological systems fail. There is no cure and no way to stop the spread once it begins. The courtroom was completely silent now. Even Prosecutor Veltar had stopped his objections and was staring at the display. Jake continued. The Zephyrian government estimated that if the shard plague reached their remaining population centers, Every member of their species would be dead within 45 days. Not just the civilians in the war zones, but every Zephyrian in the galaxy, because they all share connected crystal networks for communication and trade. He clicked to the next slide, which showed a series of desperate messages from Zephyrian officials to various galactic governments. March 16th through March 22nd, the Zephyrian government sends requests for help to the Korathian Empire, the Manthari Trade Federation, the Etherian Council, and 15 other major species. Every single request was denied. Jake looked directly at Prosecutor Veltar. The Manthari Trade Federation's official response, signed by Veltar himself in his role as Trade Security Director, stated that intervention would be too costly and that the Manthari had no strategic interest in preserving Zephyrian crystal technology. Veltar's mandibles clicked rapidly, and his compound eyes reflected the courtroom lights like mirrors. Several beings in the gallery turned to stare at him. March 23rd, Jake continued. The Zephyrian government sends their final message to the Human Federation. By this time, shard plague had reached 2 of their major cities, and they estimated total species extinction within 3 weeks. The display showed the last message from Prime Crystal Vendor. Even translated into common language, the desperation was clear in every word. To the humans, who alone among the galactic species have shown concern for our crisis, we are dying. Our children are dying. The corruption spreads faster than we can contain it. If you have any technology, any weapon, any method that can stop this plague, we beg you to use it. We authorize any action necessary to save our species, even if it means temporarily abandoning our worlds. The dead do not need planets, but the living need hope. Jake paused to let the message sink in before continuing. The Human Federation responded within 6 hours. Our scientists had been studying the shard plague phenomenon and had developed a theoretical solution, but it was untested and would require removing all Zephyrians from their planets during the treatment process. He clicked to the next slide, which showed technical diagrams of human atmospheric processing equipment. Our solution was atmospheric crystalline purification. We would flood the planet's atmospheres with specially designed particles that would neutralize the corrupted crystal shards. The process would take approximately 2 years to complete and would render the planets temporarily uninhabitable for all life forms. Jake looked around the courtroom. The key word here is temporarily. Our technology doesn't destroy planets or kill ecosystems. It puts them into a controlled stasis while we remove contamination. New images appeared showing the 3 Zephyrian worlds before the treatment began. The crystal cities were beautiful, but Jake zoomed in to show the black veins of corruption spreading through the structures like cancer. The Zephyrian government had 3 choices: do nothing and watch their entire species die within 3 weeks, request help from other galactic powers who had already refused to assist, or accept the human offer to temporarily evacuate them while we cleaned their worlds. Jake pressed another button, and official documents appeared on the display. These are the signed authorization papers from the Zephyrian Unity government, approved by Prime Crystal Vendor and ratified by the Council of Crystals. They specifically requested that we use whatever methods necessary to save their people, even if it meant, quote, turning our worlds to dust for 1,000 years, as long as our children might one day return to rebuild. The documents were covered with official seals and signatures. Jake pointed to each one as he explained its significance. But we didn't turn their worlds to dust. We did something much more sophisticated. Jake smiled as he clicked to the next slide. We built them new homes. The display now showed massive orbital habitats surrounding each of the 3 Zephyrian planets. The structures were beautiful, with gardens, lakes, and crystal-growing chambers that sparkled in the light of their local star. While our atmospheric processors cleaned the planets below, human engineers constructed luxury habitat stations for the entire Zephyrian population. These weren't refugee camps or temporary shelters. They were fully functional cities in space, designed specifically for Zephyrian biology and culture. Jake zoomed in on one of the habitats, showing Zephyrian families living in comfort, Children played in zero-gravity parks while adults worked in crystal gardens that were more productive than anything they had possessed on their original planets. The total cost of this operation was 847 billion human credits. The Human Federation paid every penny without asking for any compensation or trade agreements in return. Prosecutor Veltar finally found his voice again. Your Honor, even if these documents are authentic, it doesn't change the fact that the defendant's actions resulted in the death of 2.3 million Zephyrians. The casualty reports clearly show— Ah yes, the casualty reports, Jake interrupted, clicking to his next slide. The commercial transport ship New Horizon drifted through space like a metal whale swimming through an ocean of stars. Inside the massive vessel, 847 people lived their lives without knowing they were being watched by predators in the dark. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, coffee cup in hand, watching the starfield ahead. He had been flying these routes for 20 years. Mars runs were routine now. Load up supplies at Earth, spend 3 days in space. Unload at the red planet and head home. Simple work that paid well and kept families fed across the solar system. Course looks good, Captain, said Lisa Chun from the navigation station. She was young, maybe 25, and sharp as a laser cutter. This was only her second year as a navigator, but Jake trusted her completely. The girl had a natural feel for space travel that could not be taught. Keep us on the main shipping lane, Jake replied. No need to get creative out here. At the engineering station, Paul Rodriguez monitored the ship's vital systems. The engines hummed with steady power. Life support was running perfectly. The artificial gravity system that kept everyone's feet on the deck was working without problems. Paul had been an engineer longer than Jake had been a captain, and he knew every bolt and wire on this ship. All systems green, Paul reported. We should reach Mars orbital space in 62 hours. The bridge was quiet except for the soft sounds of computers and the low hum of the ship's systems. Outside the viewports, space looked empty and peaceful. The stars did not move. The black void between them held no visible threats. It was the kind of calm that made people forget how dangerous space could be. In the passenger sections below, families prepared for their new lives on Mars. The ship carried farmers who would grow food in the underground cities. It carried teachers who would educate the children born on the red planet. It carried doctors and engineers and shop owners and all the normal people who made a civilization work. Amy Davis sat at the communications station, handling the routine messages that kept space traffic organized. She sent position reports to Earth traffic control every 4 hours. She answered questions from other ships in the area. She made sure the New Horizon stayed visible to everyone who needed to know where it was. Earth Control, this is Commercial Transport New Horizon, Amy spoke into her headset. Position report follows. We are on schedule for Mars arrival in 61 hours, 53 minutes. All passengers and crew are healthy, no mechanical problems to report. The reply came back 40 minutes later, delayed by the vast distance between Earth and the ship's current position. New Horizon, this is Earth Control. We copy your position report. Traffic is light in your area. Have a safe journey. Amy smiled and logged a communication. These routine exchanges happened thousands of times every day across human space. They were boring, but they kept everyone safe. Ships that stopped reporting position were ships in trouble. 3 decks down, the passenger lounges buzzed with quiet activity. Children played games on electronic tablets while their parents read books or watched movies. Some passengers gathered in small groups to talk about their plans for Mars. Others simply stared out the viewports at the stars, thinking about the adventure that lay ahead. Dr. Helen Cross moved through the passenger areas, checking on people who felt sick from space travel. Most humans adapted to zero gravity within a few days, but some needed help. She carried medicine for motion sickness and kind words for homesick children. Her medical bag contained everything needed to handle minor problems during the journey. How are you feeling today, Mrs. Williams? Helen asked an elderly woman who had been having trouble with the artificial gravity. Much better, doctor, the woman replied. I think I'm getting used to this space travel business. My grandson says I'll love Mars once we get there. Helen smiled and moved on to check on a young father whose baby had been crying during the night. Shifts, the man looked tired but happy. He and his wife were taking their 6-month-old daughter to start a new farm on Mars. They had saved money for 3 years to buy passage and equipment for their new life. These were good people. Honest people. They worked hard and saved their money and followed the law. They had never hurt anyone. They just wanted to build better lives for their families on a new world. In the ship's small school area, teacher Karen White led a group of children in a lesson about Mars. She showed them pictures of the red planet and explained how the underground cities worked. The children asked excited questions about what they would see when they arrived. "Will there be aliens on Mars?" asked the 7-year-old boy named Bobby. "No aliens that we know of," Karen replied. "Just humans like us, building new homes and growing food. You'll like it there." The children pressed their faces against the viewports, trying to see Mars in the distance. All they could see were stars, but they knew their new home was out there somewhere. They talked about the friends they would make and the games they would play in the low-gravity. Captain Morrison made his evening rounds through the ship, as he did every night. He visited the engine room where Paul Rodriguez and his team kept the ship running smoothly. He stopped by the passenger areas to answer questions and make sure everyone felt safe. He checked the communications room where Amy Davis monitored the radio channels for any traffic in the area. "Anything interesting on the channels?" Jake asked. "Just the usual cargo ships and a few military patrols," Amy replied. "Everything seems normal out here." Normal was exactly what Jake wanted to hear. Normal meant safe passage to Mars. Normal meant delivering his passengers and crew without problems. Normal meant another successful run that would let him return home to his own family on Earth. The New Horizon continued through space, following the same route that hundreds of ships had used before. The civilian transport corridors were well marked and regularly patrolled by Earth defense forces. Pirates and raiders knew to stay away from these areas. The shipping lanes were safe, or so everyone believed. In the passenger quarters, families settled in for the night cycle. Parents tucked children into their sleeping alcoves. Adults read or talked quietly before turning off their lights. The ship's artificial day and night cycle helped people stay healthy during the long journey. Captain Morrison returned to his quarters near the bridge. Tomorrow would bring them halfway to Mars. The day after that, they would begin the approach to the red planet's orbital stations. Soon, his passengers would start their new lives, and he would head home with another successful mission completed. Jake looked out his small viewport at the stars before turning in for the night. Space was beautiful when it was peaceful. The tiny lights scattered across the black void reminded him why humans had chosen to spread across the galaxy. There were infinite worlds out there, infinite possibilities for growth and discovery. He had no way of knowing that alien eyes were already watching his ship. He could not see the 3 warships hiding in the shadow of a distant asteroid, their crews preparing weapons designed to kill. The predators had found their prey, and they were moving in for an attack that would change everything. The New Horizon flew on through the night, carrying its precious cargo of dreamers and builders toward what they hoped would be a bright future. Tomorrow would bring them closer to Mars. Tomorrow would bring them closer to the new lives they had planned and saved for and worked toward. Tomorrow would bring them face to face with an enemy that saw their hope as a threat worth destroying. "Communications. I've got a weak signal," she reported. The rescue ship Valiant found the escape pods 18 hours after the attack. Captain Danny Walsh had been searching the debris field where the New Horizon died, hoping against hope to find survivors among the twisted metal and frozen bodies drifting in space. When his sensors detected the first pod, Danny felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that some people had survived. Anger at whatever had done this to innocent civilians. "Medical teams to Bay 3, he announced over the ship's communication system. "We've got survivors coming aboard." The stories the survivors told made Danny's blood run cold. Children described seeing their parents die when plasma blasts tore through the ship's hull. Adults spoke of crew members who had sacrificed their lives to get others into escape pods. Everyone talked about the alien ships that had appeared without warning and attacked without mercy. Dr. Patricia Moore, the Valiant's chief medical officer, treated the wounded survivors while recording their statements. Every story was the same. The aliens had given no warning. They had ignored all attempts at communication. They had deliberately targeted escape pods full of civilians trying to flee. They hunted us like animals, said Ellen Morrison, widow of the New Horizons captain. My husband died trying to get people to safety, and they just kept shooting. The black box recordings from the destroyed ship told an even more complete story. The Valiant's computer systems analyzed every second of the attack, creating a detailed picture of exactly what had happened. The evidence was clear and damning. Captain Walsh transmitted everything to Earth Military Command, using the fastest communication protocols available. Even traveling at light speed, the signal would take hours to reach Earth, but when it arrived, it would carry proof of the most brutal attack on human civilians in the species' history. At Earth Military Command in Geneva, the message reached Admiral Patricia Hayes at 0347 hours local time. She had been sleeping when her aide woke her with news that would change the course of human civilization. "Ma'am, you need to see this immediately," Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Brown said as he handed her a secure tablet. Patricia read the initial report, then watched the black box recordings. Her face remained calm, but her eyes grew cold as winter steel. She had been a military officer for 30 years. She had seen war and death and suffering, but she had never seen anything like this. "Wake up the Joint Chiefs," she ordered. "Full emergency session in Conference Room Alpha, and get the President on a secure line." Within 2 hours, the most powerful military leaders in human space were gathered around a conference table, reviewing the evidence from the New Horizon attack. General Robert Kim of Earth Defense Forces spoke first. The attack was unprovoked and deliberate. The aliens ignored all communication attempts and specifically targeted escape pods containing civilians. Under every law of war recognized by human civilization, this constitutes mass murder. General Lisa Park, head of Space Intelligence, added her analysis. "We've identified the attacking ships as belonging to something called the Corvani hegemony. Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking their movements for months, but we classified them as a minor threat. That was clearly a mistake." Admiral Hayes pulled up a star chart showing the location of the attack. The New Horizon was in open space, following established civilian shipping routes. There was no territorial dispute, no prior contact, no reason for this attack except pure aggression. President Amanda Foster joined the meeting via secure video link from the White House. Her face was grim. As she listened to the briefings and watched the recordings of the attack, "How many people died?" she asked. 623. "Confirmed deaths," Admiral Hayes replied. "Most of them were families moving to Mars to start new lives. Children, teachers, farmers, doctors. Civilians who never hurt anyone." The president was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The Corvani hegemony has made the worst mistake in their species' history. They have murdered our people without cause or warning. They will answer for this." "What are your orders, Madam President?" Admiral Hayes asked. "Activate Protocol 7, full military response. I want every Corvani military asset identified and targeted. I want their leadership to understand that attacking human civilians is not a political statement. It is a death sentence." Protocol 7 had been developed years earlier as a response plan for attacks on civilian populations. It had never been used because no one had been foolish enough to murder human non-combatants. The Corvani had just changed that. Admiral Hayes began issuing orders that would mobilize the entire human military machine. "All fleets to immediate readiness. Cancel all leave. Recall every ship to base for combat preparation. I want our stealth reconnaissance vessels in Corvani space within 72 hours. General Kim activated the colonial militias throughout human space. Every human world, every orbital station, every mining colony needs to be ready for possible retaliation attacks. If the Corvani were willing to murder civilians once, they might try it again." General Park began the largest intelligence operation in human history. I want to know everything about the Corvani hegemony. Their military strength, their political structure, their economic systems, their territorial boundaries. I want to know where they keep their food and where they sleep at night. The president addressed the nation 12 hours later. The speech was broadcast to every human world and colony, watched by billions of people who were just learning about the attack on the New Horizon. Fellow citizens, President Foster began, yesterday, aliens calling themselves the Corvani hegemony attacked and destroyed a civilian transport ship carrying our families to Mars. 623 innocent people died, including children and elderly passengers who posed no threat to anyone. The president paused, letting the weight of those numbers sink in. The attackers gave no warning. They ignored all attempts at communication. They deliberately targeted escape pods filled with people trying to flee. This was not a military action. This was murder. Across human space, people watched their president with growing anger. The attack on the New Horizon was an attack on everything humans valued: family, hope, the right to build new lives on new worlds. The Corvani believe they have sent us a message about human expansion into space, the president continued. They have indeed sent a message, but not the one they intended. They have shown us who they truly are. They have revealed themselves as enemies of innocent life and peace. The president's voice grew harder, carrying the promise of retribution. Let me be clear to the Corvani leadership, if they are listening. You have murdered our children, our teachers, our farmers, our dreamers. You have declared war not on our military, but on our civilization itself. This will not stand. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to every human in the solar system and beyond. To our people, I say this: we will respond to this attack with all the strength and precision that Earth can bring to bear. Justice will be served. The people of the New Horizon will be avenged. Behind the scenes, the human military was already moving. Stealth ships slipped through hyperspace toward Corvani territory. Intelligence operatives activated networks of information gathering that had been years in the making. Weapons that had been theoretical designs suddenly became urgent construction priorities. Colonel Steve Martinez, head of Earth Intelligence, coordinated the information war from his secure office deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Within 48 hours, his teams had identified every major Corvani military installation, every supply depot, every communication relay, and every weakness in their defenses. How is this possible? Asked General Park when she reviewed the intelligence reports. We've been watching everyone for years, Martinez replied. The Corvani thought they were hidden, but human intelligence networks have been mapping their space since first contact protocols were established. We just never had a reason to use this information before. The military buildup was unlike anything in human history. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels suddenly switched to producing warships. Weapons factories that had been making mining equipment began creating military hardware. The entire human economy shifted toward one goal: making the Corvani pay for their crime. Admiral Hayes reviewed the strategic plans being developed by her staff. The human response would not be random violence or angry revenge. It would be surgical, precise, and absolutely devastating to Corvani military capabilities. We're not going to conquer their worlds, she told her staff. We're going to dismantle their ability to threaten anyone ever again. When we're finished, the Corvani will understand that there are lines in this universe that cannot be crossed. The families of the New Horizon victims were notified personally by military officers who brought condolences from the president, and the promise that justice would be served. Ellen Morrison, the captain's widow, spoke for many when she told the officer at her door, "I don't want revenge. I want to make sure this never happens to another family." That simple statement became the driving force behind Operation Divine Justice, the military response that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The humans were not seeking conquest or expansion. They were The first sign of trouble came from Lisa Chun at the navigation station. She stared at her screens with a confused expression, then looked up at Captain Morrison with worry in her eyes. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings. 3 large objects just appeared on sensors about 50,000 kilometers off our port side." Jake Morrison set down his coffee cup and moved to look at the display. 3 red dots had materialized where empty space had been moments before. The objects were big, easily the size of military destroyers, and they had not been there 30 seconds ago. "How did they just appear?" Jake asked. "Our sensors should have detected them from much further away." "I think they were using some kind of stealth technology," Lisa replied. "The computer is having trouble getting clear readings on their design. But they're definitely artificial, definitely ships." Paul Rodriguez looked up from his engineering station. "Those aren't human ships, Captain. The energy signatures are completely different from anything in our databases." Amy Davis was already reaching for her communication controls. "Should I hail them, Captain?" Jake nodded. "Standard first contact protocol. Identify ourselves as a civilian vessel and ask about their intentions." Amy activated the ship's main communication array. "Unknown vessels, this is the civilian transport ship New Horizon. We are carrying passengers and supplies to Mars colonies. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The bridge crew waited for a response. Seconds turned into a full minute. The 3 ships on the sensors moved closer but said nothing. "Try again," Jake ordered. "Unknown vessels, this is New Horizon. We are a civilian transport with no military capabilities. We request communication to avoid any misunderstanding." Still nothing. The alien ships continued their approach, now close enough that the ship's computers could provide better analysis of their design. They were long and dark, built for war rather than exploration. Weapon ports dotted their hulls like angry eyes. "Captain," Paul called from his station, "those ships are powering up weapon systems. Multiple energy signatures consistent with plasma cannons." Jake felt ice form in his stomach. "Amy, send out a distress signal immediately. Full emergency broadcast." "Already on it, Captain," Amy replied, her fingers flying over her controls. "Broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." Jake activated the ship's internal communication system. "All passengers and crew, this is the captain. We have encountered unknown vessels that may be hostile. This is not a drill. All personnel should immediately move to emergency stations and prepare for possible evacuation. Remain calm and follow the instructions of crew members." Through the ship, families who had been eating breakfast or reading books suddenly found themselves in a nightmare. Parents grabbed their children and moved toward the emergency assembly areas. Crew members abandoned their routine tasks and rushed to prepare the ship's few escape pods. Dr. Helen Cross was in the medical bay when the announcement came. She immediately began gathering emergency medical supplies and portable equipment. If the ship was attacked, there would be wounded people who needed help. In the ship's small school area, Teacher Karen White kept her voice steady as she led 12 children toward the nearest emergency station. "Just like we practiced in the safety drills," she told them. "Stay together and stay calm." On the bridge, the 3 alien ships had moved to surround the New Horizon. They maintained a distance of about 10,000 kilometers, close enough to use their weapons with deadly accuracy but far enough away to avoid any possible ramming attempt. "Still no response to our communications," Amy reported. "But I am getting some kind of signal from them. It's not aimed at us, though. They're talking to each other in some kind of coded transmission." "Can you break the code?" Jake asked. "Not with our equipment. This is military-grade encryption, way beyond what a civilian ship can handle." Lisa Chun looked up from her navigation station. "Captain, they've positioned themselves to cut off all our escape routes. If we try to run, at least one of them will have a clear shot at our engines." Jake stared at the tactical display. His ship was designed to carry cargo and passengers, not fight wars. The New Horizon had no weapons beyond some small point defense systems meant to destroy debris. Against 3 military vessels, they were helpless. "Amy, keep broadcasting our civilian status. Maybe they'll realize we're not a threat." But even As he said it, Jake knew it was too late. The alien ships had not appeared by accident. They had been hunting, and they had found their prey. The first plasma blast struck the New Horizons engine section without warning. The ship shuddered as if hit by a giant hammer. Lights flickered throughout the vessel. The steady hum of the engines changed to a grinding noise that meant serious damage. "Direct hit to the main engine assembly," Paul shouted over the sound. Of alarms. "We're losing power to the drive systems." A second blast hit the ship's communication array, cutting off Amy's desperate broadcasts for help. A third blast tore into the life support section, causing atmosphere to vent into space through a massive hole in the hull. "Emergency bulkheads are sealing," Paul reported, "but we've lost life support to sections 7 through 12. If there are people in those areas..." Jake activated the internal communication system, but half the speakers were dead. His voice reached only part of the ship. "All crew and passengers, abandon ship, move to the escape pods immediately. This is not a drill." In the passenger areas, panic finally broke through the careful calm that the crew had been trying to maintain. People screamed and ran toward the escape pod bays. Families were separated in the chaos. Children cried for parents who were trapped. On the wrong side of sealed emergency doors, Dr. Helen Cross found herself in a corridor filled with injured passengers. The first attack had thrown people against walls and crushed others under falling debris. She worked frantically to help the wounded while guiding them toward the nearest escape pods. "Can you walk?" she asked an elderly man who had a deep cut on his forehead. "I think so," he replied, accepting her help to stand up. "Then help me with her," Helen said, pointing to a young mother who was unconscious but breathing. Together, they carried the woman toward safety. On the bridge, more plasma blasts struck the ship. Each hit caused more damage, more systems to fail, more sections to become uninhabitable. The New Horizon was dying, and everyone aboard knew it. "How many escape pods do we have?" Jake asked. 12 pods, each holding 25 people, Lisa replied. "That's only 300 total capacity." Jake felt sick. The ship carried 847 people. Even if every pod launched successfully, more than half the passengers and crew would be left behind. "Get as many people off as possible," he ordered. "Prioritize children and elderly passengers." Amy was trying to repair the communication system when another blast struck near her station. Sparks flew from damaged circuits, and she was thrown backward against a wall. When she tried to stand up, her left arm hung at an odd angle. "Amy!" Lisa called, leaving her station to help the injured communications officer. "I'm okay," Amy gasped, though she clearly was not. "Just get me back to my station." "I almost have communications working again." Another series of plasma blasts rocked the ship. This time, the alien attackers were targeting the escape pod bays. Jake watched in horror as Pod Bay 3 took a direct hit. The entire section was vaporized, along with the pod that had been preparing to launch with 22 people inside. "They're targeting the escape pods," Paul said in disbelief. "They're not trying to capture us, they're trying to kill everyone." Jake grabbed the internal communication microphone, hoping his voice would reach the remaining functional speakers throughout the ship. "This is the captain. The attackers are targeting our escape pods. Launch immediately if your pod is ready. Do not wait for full capacity." In Pod Bay 7, teacher Corinne White helped load children into an escape pod while their parents were still trying to reach them from other parts of the ship. She made a terrible decision, closing the pod's hatch with only 16 people inside rather than waiting for it to fill completely. "Launch it now," she told the crew member at the controls. "Those children need to live." The pod shot away from the dying ship just as another plasma blast destroyed the launch bay. Corinne White and the crew member were killed instantly, but the 16 people in the pod were safe. Dr. Helen Cross was in Pod Bay 9 when the next attack came. She had managed to get 43 people into 2 pods, well over their safe capacity, but the alternative was leaving them to die. As the first pod launched, she pushed an injured child into the second pod and sealed the hatch. "Doctor, get in!" someone shouted from inside the pod. "No room," she replied, hitting the launch button. Take care of each other. The pod launched just as plasma fire destroyed the launch bay. Helen Cross died helping others escape, like so. Many of the crew members throughout the ship, on the bridge, Jake Morrison made his own final decision. The New Horizon was breaking apart. Most of the escape pods were gone, either launched successfully or destroyed by enemy fire. Less than 200 people had made it to safety. Captain, we need to get to a pod, Lisa Chun said. Jake shook his head. Someone needs to stay and transmit our final message. The people of Earth need to know what happened here. Amy Davis, despite her broken arm, had managed to restore partial. Operation Divine Justice began at exactly 0800 hours. Earth Standard Time, 48 hours after the attack on the New Horizon. Across 12 star systems, human forces moved with precision that had taken months to plan but appeared to happen. In perfect synchronization, Commander Lisa Wong stood on the bridge of the stealth destroyer Ghost Protocol, watching her tactical display as 11 other stealth ships took their positions. Each vessel was invisible to Corvani sensors, hidden by technology that bent light and absorbed energy signatures. They had been in enemy space for 6 hours, waiting for the exact moment to strike. All ships report ready, her communications officer said quietly. Lisa checked the countdown timer. 30 seconds until the operation began. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this kind of mission, but none of them had ever participated in attack of this scale and precision. 10 seconds, Lisa announced. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, execute. The Ghost Protocol fired 2 quantum torpedoes at the Corvani communication relay station orbiting the planet below. At the exact same moment, 11 other human ships fired at 11 other relay stations across Corvani space. Within 6 minutes, the entire Corvani military had lost the ability to communicate with their scattered fleets. The aliens had built their empire on centralized command and control. Every military decision flowed from their high command to their regional commanders to their individual ship captains. When the communication relays died, the Corvani military became a collection of isolated units with no way to coordinate their response. 300 light-years away, Captain Nick Thompson commanded the assault carrier Righteous Fury as it dropped out of hyperspace near the Corvani 3rd Fleet's main base. Battle Group Alpha materialized around him, 4 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 2 support ships loaded with Marines and assault craft. Target confirmation, his weapons officer reported. I count 18 Corvani warships in dock, including the flagship that attacked the New Horizon. Nick studied the tactical display. Intelligence reports had been perfect. Every enemy ship was exactly where human spies had said it would be. The Corvani base was heavily defended, but the defenders had no idea they were about to be attacked. All ships weapons-free. Primary targets are the ships that participated in the New Horizon attack. Secondary targets are any vessels that attempt to flee or fight back. The human ships opened fire with weapons that had been designed to fight enemies much more dangerous than the Corvani. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroid-sized targets focused their fury on the alien warships. Missile salvos that could destroy entire fleets launched toward the enemy base. The Corvani tried to fight back, but they were completely outmatched. Their plasma weapons, which had been so deadly against an unarmed transport ship, barely scratched the armor of human warships designed for battle. Their shields, which they had thought were impenetrable, collapsed under the focused fire of human guns. Admiral Vexka, the Corvani commander who had ordered the attack on the New Horizon, watched his fleet die from the bridge of his flagship. He had expected humans to be soft, emotional creatures who would panic under attack. Instead, he faced warriors who fought with cold calculation and overwhelming firepower. Surrender, he ordered his communications officer. Broadcast surrender on all frequencies. But the human ships did not stop firing. Admiral Vexka's flagship took hit after hit until its shields failed and its hull began to crack. Only then did a human voice come over the communication channel. Corvani vessels, this is Captain Thompson of the Earth warship Righteous Fury. You are ordered to power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Any ship that resists will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. The Corvani ships that could still move immediately shut down their weapons and broadcast surrender signals. Those that had been too badly damaged simply drifted in space, leaking atmosphere and debris. In another part of Corvani space, Captain Maria Santos commanded the intelligence vessel Silent Blade as it approached the heavily defended world of Corvax Prime. Her mission was different from the direct military strikes happening elsewhere. She was there to send a message. "Take us to within weapons range of their planetary defense grid," Maria ordered. The Silent Blade was smaller than a destroyer but carried some of the most advanced technology in the human fleet. Electronic warfare systems that could disable enemy computers, cyber weapons that could take control of alien networks, stealth systems that made the ship completely invisible to Corvani sensors. "Beginning electronic assault," reported Lieutenant Ben Carter from the Cyber Warfare Station. "I'm accessing their defense grid control systems now." On the planet below, 3 billion Corvani civilians lived their daily lives, unaware that human ships were in orbit above them. The planetary defense system that protected them consisted of hundreds of orbital weapons platforms and shield generators. It was designed to stop any invasion fleet. Ben Carter's cyber attack moved through the Corvani computer networks like a virus designed by genius minds. Within 20 minutes, he had complete control of the planet's defenses. "Defense grid is ours, Captain," he reported. "I can disable it completely or turn their own weapons against them." Maria Santos made a decision that would demonstrate the difference between human and Corvani concepts of warfare. "Disable the grid, but do not target any civilian areas. I want them to know we could have destroyed their cities but chose not to." The Corvani defense platforms shut down one by one. Shield generators that protected major population centers went offline. Weapon systems that could have fought off an invasion fleet simply stopped working. On the planet below, emergency sirens wailed as the Corvani government realized they were completely defenseless. "Now send them a message," Maria ordered. Ben Carter opened a communication channel that reached every screen and speaker on the planet below. "Citizens of Corvax Prime, this is the human warship Silent Blade. Your defense grid has been disabled. Your world is completely vulnerable to attack. We could destroy your cities and kill your people, just as you destroyed our civilian transport and killed our families." The message continued as billions of Corvani listened in terror. "But we are not you. We do not murder innocents. We do not target those who cannot fight back. Your defense grid will be restored in 1 hour. Use that time to think about the difference between human justice and Corvani cruelty." Captain Santos ordered her ship to leave orbit after exactly 1 hour, during which the Corvani government had time to understand how completely they had been outmatched. The human ship had penetrated their most secure space, disabled their strongest defenses, and then left without harming a single civilian. Similar demonstrations happened across Corvani territory. Human forces struck military targets with devastating precision while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. Corvani warships were destroyed or captured. Supply depots were eliminated. Command centers were reduced to rubble, but not a single Corvani civilian was harmed by human weapons. The contrast with the New Horizon attack was deliberate and obvious. The Corvani had murdered families without warning. The humans destroyed military targets while protecting innocents. The message was clear: one species understood the rules of civilized warfare, and the other did not. Admiral Patricia Hayes coordinated the entire operation from Earth Military Command, watching as reports came in from a dozen different battle zones. Every strike was proceeding according to plan. Corvani military resistance was collapsing faster than anyone had expected. They built their entire military structure around intimidating weaker species, she told President Foster during a secure video conference. When they faced an enemy that could fight back, they folded immediately. The president reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. Human casualties were minimal. Corvani military casualties were enormous. Most importantly, no Corvani civilians had been harmed despite being completely defenseless against human attack. How long until their complete surrender? The President asked. Based on current resistance levels, no more than a week, Admiral Hayes replied. Their High Council is already trying to open communication channels. They want to negotiate. The President's expression remained hard. They will surrender unconditionally, or we will continue dismantling their military until there is nothing left. They do not get to negotiate after murdering our civilians. In the escape pods still drifting near the New Horizon wreckage, the survivors listened to news reports about the human response on their emergency radios. Teacher Karen White's sister Beth had made it to one of the pods. She wept as she heard about the precision strikes that were dismantling the Corvani military. Jake Morrison was right, she told the other survivors. Earth remembered us. Dr. Helen Cross's husband had been among the passengers who died in the initial attack. Her daughter Susan had survived in one of the escape pods. Susan listened to the reports of human victories and felt something she had not expected, pride rather than revenge. Mom would have wanted this, she told the others. Not because she hated the Corvani, but because she believed innocent people should be protected. The efficiency of the human response shocked even Earth's own military.